Hello, everybody. Chapter 9, Dearborn Essentials of New Jersey Real Estate. Okay, so this chapter is going to talk about our government controls, our government restrictions on property, on real estate ownership. We're also going to talk about hazardous materials, things like that. So obviously, you've probably seen a couple of these videos before. I'm going to say the key term. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what the key term review is from the back of that chapter. Okay, so sometimes it needs some filling in. Sometimes I'm going to give you a little explanation about it. Okay, so here we go. Asbestos. Asbestos. This is a now banned hazardous mineral used once for insulation. Amazing insulator. You'll see this in a lot of different things. Typically wrapped around piping because, again, used mostly for insulation. Also has been used in tiling. Reason it was used in tiling was to keep the warmth in. Siding, same reason. So you'll see this in homes, in a lot of homes that are older. Sometimes you would even see asbestos used in popcorn ceilings. Sometimes you'll see that. So this is a material that was really widely used, and it's banned now because it has a friable nature. Friable means that it becomes airborne, it becomes particleized really easily. So basically, when I say friable, I'm spelling it Friable. And that basically means that it could easily become airborne. It has a crumbly nature to it. So what happens is when it's disturbed, because of its friability, it tends to kind of break off and be inhaled, and that causes a lot of health issues. So if you do have asbestos in any home that you're working on and that you're doing work to, the disruption of the asbestos might cause it to become airborne, and that is very hazardous. So be careful on that. Building codes. So this is standards for construction. Each town, each municipality, they might have different standards. Each state would have different standards. And this is really your standards for construction. Okay. So sometimes you'll hear someone say that doesn't seem like it's up to code. Now, it could still be grandfathered in. It could be something that they'll still allow it, and it won't require you to change it because it's functioning and poses no immediate hazard. Okay. But as far as building anything new or making kind of renovations to get permits for them, you need to be up to the building codes, and that's going to be your standards for construction. CERCLA. When I say CERCLA, if you're just listening to this, it's CERCLA. So this is the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act of 1980. This has to do with the EPA, and this has to do with the liabilities in regards to cleanup sites for hazardous materials, things of that nature. It's a broad stroke of the pen in regards to a lot of the minutia in regards to CERCLA. However, what you really need to understand is that this is a super fund set up in 1980 to clean up environmental sites that need to be cleaned up due to some sort of contamination. Okay. Certificate of occupancy. This tends to be somewhat state specific. So if you're watching this and you're a national test taker, this might not apply to you. Certificate of occupancy. So this is inspector's approval for human habitation. Now, we certainly have this in the state of New Jersey, but also this goes according to municipalities. Some municipalities do not require a certificate of occupancy, and they just require a smoke certificate. There are certain municipalities that require much more in-depth inspections. So that really is town specific. So if you are selling real estate in any town, It would behoove you to go to the town hall, go to the building department, and speak to them about what is required for resale, and understand also what type of inspection will need to happen, and also what the home would have to be brought up to snuff with. So there's certain towns that they require a lot more, certain towns require a lot less. But please do, if you do get your real estate license, you get into this certificate of occupancy is very, very important and also takes some time. So another like word to the wise, the practical side of things in regards to real estate is do your due diligence in regards to how far they're scheduling out, because some towns are scheduling out 2, 3, 4 months in advance. Some towns that it's a week, 2 weeks. So you really want to get to know what that is, because that might cause delays in your closing for you, your client, and also the other side's clients. Condemnation. When you condemn a property, condemnation. This is a court action by which the government takes property. So usually this is the action that is taken by which government takes property through condemnation is the action. Okay. They usually take it because of eminent domain. Okay. So you'll see that this is the process by which they take that property back. Okay. So condemnation is the actual process in which they take the property back. A deed restriction. Deed restriction. This is a limit on use of property set by the seller. And I don't like to say seller because it could be anyone who's transferring title, so signing a deed over to someone else. There's a deed restriction. Now, also keep in mind this must be legal. It has to be legal, so you can't say something like you cannot sell to black people. Can't say something like that. So this is a limit on the use of property set by the seller. And you're probably thinking, and I know that a lot of people struggle with this. A lot of my students, a lot of people that I work with struggle with trying to find practical cases in regards to when would something like this happen? There's unique situations, and really what happens is this. I always tell people, I'm like, don't struggle to try to find a practical usage of it. Understand what it is, rather than struggle to find the practical use for it. So something like this, deed restrictions, they could still be placed today. The likelihood of them, and here's the thing, the practical sense of it is, when would it be set? There's really very, very few times in which this would happen. But in extenuating circumstances, I could see this happening. In various circumstances. However, don't struggle to find practical use for things. Try to understand the definition and the law and the application of that law to just help you understand what it is. So I know that's a little convoluted what I just said, and I know I kind of got a little winded there, but I really try to steer my students away from really focusing on a practical usage, because sometimes that's not going to help you, because these are really outlier situations. So a deed restriction is a limit on the use of the property set by the person who's actually transferring the deed. So the grantor. I don't like seller because, again, it could be, there doesn't need to be a sale involved in this. So that's the only kind of critique I would give on this. Department of Environmental Protection, also known as the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. This is a New Jersey agency overseeing natural resources. That's it. DEP state level. So that's where you will see the DEP come in. Okay. Eminent domain. I've already spoken about this a little bit before. Eminent domain. This is the government's power to take property for public use, and they do so with through the process of condemnation. So they can condemn a property, and they take it for a higher and greater use. Again, this is another one that I get into a lot of practicalities in regards to explaining stories behind eminent domain. This is a very, very broad law that's been written because the government has to be able to take properties for various public uses. And it might not be infrastructure. It might not be for things that necessarily have even been created yet. There's times where, I'm sure that when the infrastructure of the United States was being created and we were building out our highway systems, our interstate and through state, federal, highway systems, that they were really, it was one of the first times that things like that had been done. So there are things that might come up in the future that the government might have to take certain properties back for public use, and they would do so because of eminent domain through the process of condemnation. Escheat. Escheat. This is a reversion of a property to the state when an intestate, owner dies without heirs. So if you die intestate, that means that you don't have a will. Okay. So if you die intestate, you do not have a will, and if you do not have heirs, the property reverts back to the state. I had a question the other day where someone asked me, and again, I will speak New Jersey specific, because I don't know the nuances and minutia of every state. So the reversion of property back to the state when an intestate owner dies without heirs, they said, what if it was sold? What if the property was then sold at a public auction, on the county or city level, and where would the funds then go back to? It would go back to the state treasury because the ownership of that property is going to be to the state. And it always reverts back to the state level, regardless of what happens on a municipality level. If it escheats, then it will go back on a state level. And again, I speak New Jersey specific on that. There are some states where it might go to treasury of that municipality. It might go to the county level. So again, state specific. Exclusionary zoning. Exclusionary zoning. This is discriminatory local zoning. Exclusionary means excluding something. Local zoning. Yeah, so this is a discriminatory practice. This is not legal. Lead-based paint. Lead-based paint. Once widely used wall covering containing now banned material for properties built before 1978. The 1978 or before, okay, a disclosure needs to be handed out, a lead-based paint disclosure. And basically what that lead-based paint disclosure will state is that whether or not the seller has any knowledge, reports, or records of lead-based paint in the home, whether they have records or knowledge of it actually being applied, or if they have records or knowledge of it because of testing and things that they have knowledge thereof, for whatever the reason being. So lead-based paint is very hazardous if it is ingested, okay? And I do recommend the EPA has various pamphlets out there that will allow for you to provide them to your clients. You have to give those to your clients, actually. So, I mean, now they're all electronic, so you can easily send the website. But if there is a concern that there might be some lead-based paint that was used in the home, I do highly suggest that you educate your clients on it and let them know the resources that they have available to them in regards to testing and also in regards to remediation of said lead paint. So there's various different ones. I won't go too much into it, but that's something that you legally are obligated as a seller to disclose if it's built 78 or prior. And again, it's whether you have knowledge or you don't have knowledge. So if you don't have knowledge, which is typically 9 out of 10 times, actually, let me rephrase that, 8 out of 10 times, kind of, you would say, hey, have no knowledge, have no records. And then you would pass that along to the prospective homeowner, and they would then sign off that they got that. So the lead-based paint disclosure is a legal requirement if any home is built 78 or earlier. Master plan. Master plan. This is the primary method by which local government recognized development goals. So the master plan basically kind of outlines the town or local government's development. So it's something that this is what they go by in regards to allowing things, not allowing things, stuff of that nature. And this is extremely local government specific. So I won't get into too many details, minutia, practical sense of this, because again, this is very, very hyper local. So that would dictate as far as wherever you're doing business. Non-conforming use. A non-conforming use. So this is an existing use that doesn't meet current zoning standards. Something that I could think of is we have a highway in Jersey, Route 9, and I think specifically in the Monmouth County area. Route 9 is in regards to infrastructure in the state, it is a fairly new highway. Okay, it's a fairly young highway, that of like 40 years old. So there are homes that were built on Route 9 when it was zoned residential. And now those homes are a non-conforming use because all of Route 9 is zoned commercial for commercial use. So you'll see strip malls, um, commercial buildings, all that kind of stuff on Route 9. You will not see any new homes built on Route 9. You'll see them built set back in the development if a builder has like, several acres to build multiple units. But you won't see anything actually frontage to 9 in regards to residential. So any of those homes that are still standing are going to be that of a non-conforming use where the existing use doesn't meet current zoning standards. Okay. So non-conforming use is perfectly legal. However, if that use is abandoned, so if they decided to open up, let's say, a burger joint in that house that was a residential usage, so now they're ultimately turning it into commercial, then what happens is they abandon that non-conforming use and they can no longer go back to it without a variance of some sort. Police power. Police power. This is the government's right to regulate for health and safety. When we think of police power, I always think of safety, but there are health reasons as well. The government has the right to access your property to do things. And I always think of the Boston Marathon bomber, where he was hiding in the person's boat. The government and police and law enforcement had the right for public safety to go onto that property and to get that person. Okay. So, because there's a criminal hiding there. There are times when, yes, warrants and things like that, search warrants would have to come into play, but that has to do with law enforcement, legality, criminal justice that we're not talking about right now. We're talking that a limitation to your ownage of a property, your property ownership rights is that of police power, meaning that the government has the right to regulate for health and safety reasons, whether it's through zoning, through restrictions, through actual police power, where they come on with law enforcement onto your property, things of that nature. They have the right to do that. Radon. Radon. This is a naturally occurring radioactive gas. So again, see, there's a key here. This is a hazardous material. It's hazardous. So the litmus test for this is that it's hazardous. They say above 4 picocuries per liter of concentration within a home. So this is a naturally occurring radioactive gas. Please don't ever tell your clients that this town, this home, this area does not have radon, because it's very, very, very misleading. I never tell a client there is zero chance of you having radon, because it is a naturally occurring radioactive gas. I've been in one home that had 24 picocuries per liter, very, 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 very high concentration of radon occurring within the home. And the house next door had less than 1 picocurie per liter reading on concentration of radon. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. This is naturally occurring. It comes from the bedding, the rock and the soil underneath the ground. So it's usually homes. Typical home that has a problem with this has a basement of some sort and is capturing basically that radioactive gas as naturally occurring. And how they remediate it is they actually take a PVC pipe. And now I'm doing the very, very basic knowledge of this. I'm giving you the 10,000 foot view of this. They put a PVC pipe into the ground, okay, seal it, put a fan into it that vents out to the side of the home. So basically what it does is it's basically allowing for the gas to have a path to exit and not just build up in the home and stay there. And this could be very hazardous. This is something that's very easy to test for. And it's something that I would definitely highly recommend that your clients do. If you're having a home inspection of some sort and you're advising your clients, I always say, look, they should speak to professionals and they should take the advice of professionals. However, when it comes to radon, um, it could occur in any area, any home. There's areas where I've heard inspectors say, no, there is no radon here, and radon is absolutely active. So in practical, I'm giving you a little practical knowledge here. Practical knowledge, definitely let your clients know about radon. And definitely, you could look like a hero if you're talking to them and you could say a couple things. I always like saying, hey, if it's above 4 picocures per liter, it makes me look really, really smart when I say something like that. That's all. And that and the basics of a radon system are what I know. So past that, I would have to divert to a specialist. Variance. A use that does not meet zoning requirements. So I just spoke earlier about where I was saying, hey, non-conforming use, if they abandon that use, they would then have to apply for a variance. So a variance is after the fact of the matter, where you're applying for it. You're saying, hey, can I have this variance? I know that these are the zoning requirements, and this, whatever I'm doing, whatever it is, does not match with the zoning requirements. So can I do this? And if I can, you would be granted a variance by the local zoning board. Zoning ordinance. So this is a municipal restriction on the uses of real estate in various areas. So yeah, zoning ordinance. So we were talking about zoning, it's short for zoning ordinance. So that's the municipal's restriction on uses of real estate in various areas. It's look, that's actually a really solid definition. I can't add anything to that other than repeating it and saying that is accurate. And that is it. That is it for the chapter. I clicked a couple times. I got no more slides for you guys. So that means, hey, so long. Sayonara, everybody. Till next time.